And they were willing to do that and let the chips fall where they may, rather than trying to behave in such a way to get the chips to fall in a certain order. So as to give them a sense of security, because money means power. Money means ability to control. Money means the ability to govern your circumstances, you see? A vow of poverty has nothing to do with lacking what is needed. It has nothing to do with having nothing. It has to do with being devoted to something other than accumulating things so as to substantiate one's own substance, position, authority, and power. Those who cannot embrace their brothers with a desire, what? To be the evidence of love on behalf of his brother or sister, blocks the flow of the movement of all that God is, that would move through him in extension to everything. And blocking that flow constitutes an impoverishment. In doing it, it causes each one of you to forget who you are, to suffer from amnesia. That's the poverty that we're talking about. It has nothing to do with dollars and cents, or clean fabric to wrap around your body, or beautiful fabric to cover your body with, or a comfortable bed to sleep in, and so on. So, understand that the poverty that's being talked about here is the poverty of your ignorance of understanding who you are. The poverty that causes you not to reach for, or be open to, or desire the influx of a clearer understanding of what you divinely are. The poverty is one that disallows you from recognizing or even conceiving the possibility of the fact that you are the Christ, that you are the immaculate expression of God right now, and you have never been anything else. That is poverty. Do not take a vow of that kind of poverty. But do understand that when you value the ego, you are taking a vow of that kind of poverty. Be black and white enough, be clear enough to recognize that so that you can more easily say, wow, that's not what I want to do. So that a change of behavior can occur. So that what? All that we're reading about ceases to be interesting and stimulating ideas about the truth about you, and becomes something that you allow to transform into actual experience, so that your mental and physical behavior changes. Continuing, to identify with the ego is to attack yourself. Why is that? Well, we just said it. Because when you're devoted to the ego, you are devoted to your ignorance. Mental and experiential ignorance of the truth. To identify with the ego is to attack yourself and make yourself poor. That is why everyone who identifies with the ego feels deprived. If you're going through the day feeling deprived of whatever, freedom, health, peace, know that it's because of one reason only. You have identified with the ego. You haven't identified with the truth of you. You haven't identified with the place of excellence in you that is you in your fullness. What he experiences then is depression or anger. But what he did is to exchange his self-love for self-hate, making him afraid of himself. He does not realize this. You do not realize this. Even if he is fully aware of anxiety, he does not perceive its source as his own what? Ego? No. He does not perceive its source as his own ego identification. It exists because you have become devoted to the ego. You have become the worshipper of the ego. It's because you have chosen poorly. And on top of it, you've chosen for something that's purely imaginary. Even if he is fully aware of anxiety, he does not perceive its source as his own ego identification. And he always tries to handle it by making some sort of insane arrangement with the world. What does that mean? He tries to manipulate his world. He tries to get his world to behave in a way that will provide him with a sense of security and safety that he lacks, that will allow him to release the anxiety, not realizing that the only thing that will relieve him of the anxiety is to switch his allegiance from the ego to that which is nothing more than his right mind. To switch his allegiance from his much revered independence to a state of dependence, immutable union with the Father, with his source. He always perceives this world that he's going to make insane arrangements with through manipulation as outside himself. For this is crucial to his adjustment. His adjustment to what? His adjustment to his insanity. His adjustment to wrong devotion. He does not realize that he makes this world. For there is no world outside of him. You see, the fact is that as the Christ, your mind is the mind of God, not divided up into bits and pieces. And therefore, all that exists is some aspect of the infinitude of your being. and none of it is outside of you, and all that is, quote, inside you is unlimited, infinite, unbounded. Now listen to this. If only the loving thoughts of God's Son are the world's reality, the real world must be in his mind. Does it say there that if only the loving thoughts of God's Son are the world's reality, the real world must be an illusion? The real world must not exist at all? No, it says that the real world must be in his mind. The distinction here is that it is not out there in space as you're experiencing it at the moment. It is a conscious experience going on in your own infinite mind. His insane thoughts, too, must be in his mind. See, there just isn't any out there for any of it to be, the illusion or the truth. His insane thoughts, too, must be in his mind. But an internal conflict of this magnitude he cannot tolerate. You cannot tolerate. A split mind is endangered. What's the saying? A house divided against itself cannot stand. That which is fragmented lacks integrity, and it must fall. And that's why so much of your existence is taken up with fixing up that which is falling apart. Because you're trying to hold together something that doesn't really exist. A split mind is endangered. Glory, hallelujah. And I'm encouraging you to let it go ahead and collapse, so that in its absence you will experience what's left, which is nothing more than your right mind, and you fully conscious of your eternal oneness with God, and therefore with the conscious awareness of being that is characteristic of the divine, capital M, mind, in which no illusion is going on at all, in which your experience of your birthright is not obscured. A split mind is endangered, and the recognition that it encompasses completely opposed thoughts within itself is intolerable. Therefore, the mind projects the split, not the reality. The reality remains untouched, unaffected. Nothing happens to it. Because it's only the misperception occasioned by fear that is occasioned by your orphanhood constitutes the conflict that's intolerable and that must be projected out there so that something out there may be blamed and then turned into an ethic of overcoming so as to gain a sense of your own autonomous worth. Everything you perceive as the outside world is merely your attempt to maintain your ego identification. For everyone believes that identification is salvation. Well, if a self-image isn't your salvation, what is? If identification is not, what is? Identity Identity, for purposes of illustration, is that which pre-exists any conscious thought you can possibly have. Identity is unalterable, permanent, eternal, and unbounded. Identity includes within itself all of creation, with nothing left outside of itself and without conflict of any kind. Again, if identification is not salvation, what is? Identity. Yet, consider what has happened. For thoughts do have consequences to the thinker. Important. Not what's going on out there in the world. That isn't what has consequences for you. The thoughts which you embrace and invest with meaning in your own mind have consequences. And it works both ways. Consequences aren't negative. When the thought is illuminated in your mind that God is infinite love, which emanates from you and around you and to you from everything, and you feel loved, there's a consequence. Fear cannot exist in that conscious experience. Vulnerability cannot exist in that conscious experience. The consequence of that idea allowed to be experienced is heaven. Very simply. It is creation experienced without distortion. On the other hand, if you wish to have created ideas that are pure fantasy, in other words, having no basis in fact, and you wish to make commitment to them, devotion to them, there are going to be consequences. Devotion to that which isn't true is uncomfortable, because it's you trying to act as though you're out of your mind. And yet you can't actually violate your divine sanity. And so the sanity of your being, which is unalterable, will constantly remind you that your foray into illusion is not natural, is not real, is not your birthright, and that you therefore cannot be comfortable employing that frame of mind. The discomfort is there to remind you to come back home into your sanity. You are at odds with the world, this is important, as you perceive it. Because you think it is antagonistic to you. Why do you think that? Because you projected it out there because it was too hard for you to embrace the full conscious awareness that you were believing, fully believing, opposites. You were fully believing the possibility of absolute conflict, which of course is an absolute impossibility. So you are at odds with the world as you perceive it. You say, this is me, that's not me. This is me, that flower is not me. Well, that's not true. All conscious experiences, all true ideas, are some aspect of the infinitude of your infinite mind. It is all you. It is all a singularity. And none of it is antagonistic to you. You are at odds with the world as you perceive it, as you have given it definition, because you think it is antagonistic to you. This is a necessary consequence of what you have done. You have projected outward what is antagonistic to what is inward, and therefore you would have to perceive it this way. That is why you must realize that your hatred is in your mind and not outside it, before you can get rid of it. And why you must get rid of it before you can perceive the world as it really is. Now, in many spiritual or metaphysical teachings, the idea is expressed that you must raise every human condition to the mental level. You must translate it into ideas in order for the true idea to be able to, let us say, have an effect on the false idea. It still posits the idea that the false idea is something that can be affected by a true idea. That is not the case. What happens is that, as it's said, when you bring the darkness to the light, or you bring the light to the darkness disappears. By taking every manifestation of imperfection and bringing it to the mental level, recognizing that it has to be and can be nothing other than an idea that is false, you take it out of the realm of physical cause and effect. You know, a physical universe out there that you're in the middle of. You bring it right into the middle of you as mind, so that you can look at it as an idea and, we'll say, compare it with the true idea. So that in the recognition of what the true idea is, it becomes perfectly logical to you to accept that the false idea will simply dissolve because there's nothing to support it anymore. And you will not have manipulated matter. You will not have manipulated a faulty world out there, but your world will no longer reflect your mental confusion because you have become unconfused. That is why you must realize that your hatred or your ignorance, your being offended, and the thing you're offended at is in your mind and not outside it before you can get rid of it, and why you must get rid of it before you can perceive the world as it really is. Creation, as the Father is being it. We once said that God so loved the world that He gave it to His only begotten Son. God does love the real world. It's the expression, it's the embodiment, it's the rendering visible and tangible the love, the movement of the love of God. And that's why in moments of illumination, you have the experience of seeing everything, all that you have called physical form, in movement, radiating, emanating, extending toward you love that you actually feel embraced by and one with. And then comes the almost instantaneous, inevitable realization that the love that you're embraced by is the love that you are, that it is a singularity. God does love the real world, and those who perceive its reality cannot see the world of death. Not being able to see the world of death is the consequence of your having no other conscious intent but to see the evidence of God, to see the evidence of love, and to be the evidence of love. It's a consequence that you don't have to enact. It isn't a penalty that is laid down in the presence of love, in the presence of a singular mind, in the presence of a mind that is sane. Conflict doesn't exist. Conflict is non-existent. In the process of awakening, it appears to disappear. And so the word consequence can be used. God does love the real world, and those who perceive its reality cannot see the world of death. For death is not of the real world, in which everything is eternal. Conflict is not of singularity. You see? God gave you the real world in exchange for the one you made out of your split mind, and which is the symbol of death. For if you could really separate yourselves by virtue of divorce from the mind of God, you would die, and the world you perceive is a world of separation. But you can't die, and therefore the world is not truly a world of separation. It is still the presence of God, the movement of God, called creation, which embodies the words, the meaning of the words, behold. In other words, be alert, be conscious, watch. I make all things new. Now, you were willing to accept even death, to deny your Father. The temptation to be an independent thinker, an independent authorizer, was pretty tempting, was pretty seductive. And of course, as I've said before, at that point, you were feeling your omnipotence. And so you felt no fear around venturing into this experience of autonomy. And so you did it with gusto. You were willing to accept even death to deny your Father, yet He would not have it so, and so it is not so. You still could not will against Him. You couldn't change the way things work. You still could not will against Him, and that is why you have no control over the world you made.